Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Before we get into this guide, I just want to say thanks for the support on the last video. We had just under 500 subscribers when that went live, and now that has shot to nearly 1500, which is an insane jump for just one video, so thanks again. This is my most in-depth guide I've created so far on the channel, so please let me know what you think in the comments below, whether you like these longer form style guides or prefer short style ones like my 5 top comps. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. So this comp was the first on my 5 top comps to climb with due to the fact that it received 5 different buffs across the traits and units it uses, as well as the fact that it was already an A tier comp to begin with. I said that it would be one of the strongest reroll comps this patch, and although I was right, it wasn't just for the reasons that I mentioned. The main reasons this comp is so strong right now is that it counters the most popular comps being played, and one of them being Disco tier. The reason this comp is such a huge pain to deal with for Disco tier is that they're forced to position a certain way to get the effect of the disco balls. This leaves the comp wide open for edgelords to access the backline and assassinate TF. I'm unsure if it was intended by Riot or not, but the edgelord ability to dash through a unit once they go below 50% health allows them to occupy the same hex the disco ball is in. This means that if you position your edgelords on the same side as the disco balls, once the frontline unit drops below 50% health, the edgelord unit will dash directly into the backline and attack the closest unit, which is usually TF, as the most of the time he's in the corner. So now you know why this comp is so good in the current meta and how to beat the most popular comp being played right now. We're going to go through how to play this comp, starting with the final composition options through to augments and items, and gameplay at each stage of the game in a master's lobby. So the final comp depends on which version of the Riven headliner you get. Ideally you want the 8-bit version as it's slightly stronger and plays Caitlyn to activate 4 8-bit. Or if you get the edgelord version, you drop your weakest edgelord unit, which will either be Yasuo or Yone for Corki, to keep 4 8-bit active. With this comp, your only real objective is to hit level 7 and 3-star Riven as fast as possible. The faster you do that, the higher placement you'll get. As we're one-tricking this comp, we need to be prepared for things to go wrong, the first of which will be items. We're not always going to get the exact components we want, so we need to compromise and build the best items for the comp based on what we get. Unless you get the Indomitable Will augment, the only exception to this is the one item that is 100% mandatory for this comp to work, and that's QSS. Without QSS, or the Indomitable Will augment, Riven will quickly die while CC'd, as all of her tankiness comes from a shield ability, and if she can't get that off, then she's dead. I've highlighted all of the different items that you can use for this comp. As you can see, there are items with every component that can be used, so regardless of what components you get, you can build items that will work. Rods and Tears are the worst components you can get dropped, especially in the early game, but using them to build items such as Crown Guard on Maud or Morello's on Viego works very well. Your main prioritization should be QSS on Riven, along with one healing item such as BT or Hand of Justice, and then flex a third item such as Titans or Giant Slayer. Once Riven is itemized, your next prioritization should be Armor Shred and Healing Reduction. This can either be Even Shroud or Last Whisper for Armor Shred, or Red Buff and Morello's for Healing Reduction. Augments are simple for this comp, as you want any reroll augments such as the ones that give free champion duplicators, or the strong combat augments to increase survivability like Vampirism. For the early game, 3 standout headliners I look for when one-tricking this comp in order of priority is Olaf, Yasuo and Corki. Olaf is especially strong in the early game if you manage to get a decent item on him like BT or Titans, and it allows you to activate Pentakill early on before you find Viego. Yasuo as a headliner is also a strong item holder, especially the edgelord version, as it allows you to hit 3 edgelord early on if you find a Kayle, and sends a signal to the other players from the beginning that you might be playing edgelords. And finally, Corki is a third option for your item holder. He's not as good as the other two, but if it's the 8-bit version or you manage to find a Garen as well, it allows you to start stacking the 8-bit high score early on, which will help later stages in the game. To decide whether to level to 4 before the first player round, scout the other boards to see how strong the other players are. If you think you can make a stronger board and beat the majority of players in the lobby, then level to 4 and try to win streak. If there are lots of players you think look strong, such as lots of 2-star units and full items, or you can make 10 gold, then stay at level 3. Knowing when you have a stronger board will only come with experience, so don't worry if you're not great at this to start with. If you lose a fight you think you should have won, then make sure to take a mental note of what their board looked like, and learn for next time. At stage 2-5, you want to level to 5 and slot in units that activate or contribute to any of your active traits. Ideally you want to be sticking to edgelords and or the pentakill traits to make it as easy as possible to build your final board later on. At stage 3-2 you want to level up to 6. Make sure you're always looking at what headliners are offered to see if you can upgrade. Some great headliners to carry you through the mid game that fit well into your comp are Gnar and Kale. You should have hopefully found at least 1 or possibly 2 Rivens by now, and have both Edgelord and Pentakill or 8-bit active. Don't worry if you don't have all of them active, just 1 active is fine, and then play whatever frontline units you can 2-star. Depending on how well the early to mid game went, you can hit level 7 as early as 3-5, but in most cases it will be around 4-1. Really it's whenever you can level to 7 and still have 40 to 50 gold left. It's at this point you want to sell your current headliner and roll for Riven headliner and the rest of the units you need. Make sure to have all the units you need in your team planner to make it easy for you to buy the units. Right now there's a bug in TFT where if you see a headliner which shares a trait with the headliner you want, in our case 8-bit or Edgelord, and you roll past it, then you won't see another headliner with those traits for at least 4 more shops. In order to bypass this bug, you can buy and sell the headliner. For example, if you see a Yone headliner, because it's an Edgelord, you'll want to buy and sell it, else you won't see Riven for at least 4 more shops. And likewise, if you see a Garen headliner, you'll want to do the same as it's an 8-bit. This is going to be fixed in patch 14.2, which is being released on the 24th of January, so if you're watching this after that date, don't worry about doing this. Once you find the Riven headliner, depending on the version it is, you want to either activate 5 Edgelord or 4 8-bit, and from there you econ back up and start slow rolling to 3-star her. Ideally after the Rolldown you should have at least 6 Rivens. When slow rolling, the general rule I follow is rolling any excess gold to the nearest 10, and if I see a Riven I roll another 10 gold, and if I see another I roll another 10 gold. For example, if I'm on 50 gold and I roll 2 shops and see a Riven, I'll roll another 10 gold and so on until either I don't find another one or I manage to 3-star her. Once you hit 3-star Riven, you want to level to 8 and put in both 5 Edgelord and 4 8-bit to cap out your board. If you manage to find an 8-bit emblem on the carousel or a tome, then you can look at going 6 8-bit by dropping down to 3 Edgelord, or you can simply drop Caitlyn for a strong utility front line like Alawi or Yorick. From this point on, it's really all about positioning your Riven in the perfect spot each round to ensure you have the best chance of winning. So now we've gone through the comp and how to play it, we're going to break down a real game I played in Masters, going through the key decisions and late game positioning choices, as positioning is by far the biggest factor in whether you get a first, second, third or fourth. So we start off the game getting an Olaf headliner along with a Kale and Garen, which are 2 units in our final comp. So far so good. Unfortunately we didn't get any components to slam any items at this point, but we did get a cloak which we'll really need for QSS, and we did get a chain which we can use for Titans, so we're in a fairly good position. We get given a gold augment selection, and although I was tempted to pick buried treasures for the extra item components, I think heroic grab bag is just too good to pass up for this comp, as 2 duplicators will mean we will hit Riven way earlier than normal and allow us to preserve a lot of health in the late game. As we have a fairly weak board with only 1 2-starred unit, no items to slam, and we're pretty much down a gold augment until we hit 3-star Riven, I decided to skip leveling to 4 and go on a lose streak. We're now at stage 2-5, just off the carousel we've picked up a BF sword to make BT, and we've now managed to 2-star Garen quite early on, but our damage is still fairly lacking, so we're quite weak still. We're at 30 gold, which is fairly decent econ at this stage, and as we were already on a 3 loss streak, I decided to try and continue the loss streak into Krugs, to try and hit 50 gold as soon as possible. We make it into a 4 loss streak and try to force the 5 loss streak in the round just before Krugs. I put my 2 backline units in the front line to try to force the loss, but unfortunately we go up against a very weak board and end up winning the round. It's not a huge deal as the streak bonuses were nerfed last patch, but we would be in a much better position if we did get the loss. We get a prismatic augment selection at 3-2, and all of them are pretty terrible for our comps, so we re-roll them all and manage to get Freaky Friday, which is a great augment for this comp. You use Trinity Force in place of Titans on Riven, and then use the other on a secondary edgelord like Yone or Viego. Coming off the carousel at 3-5, we hit our first Riven and level to 7. I decide not to sell Olaf this round to look for Riven, as the shop is going to natural a headliner anyway, essentially giving us a free chance to see a headliner Riven. As soon as the round is over, we sell Olaf and start rolling for our Riven headliner and any additional units. We find a Kale headliner early on, which means we need to buy and sell it due to the bug I mentioned earlier, which would cause us not to see a headliner Riven. Luckily we managed to find it early on in the rolldown, and rather than rolling down anymore, I decided to wait and see how stable of a board this is against the rest of the players in the lobby. We go up against a disco player and win the round pretty convincingly, but we're still sitting on a lot of 1-star units, so I'll look at doing a slight roll down to 30 each round to try and stabilise the board a bit more. We only need 3 Rivens from the shop as we already have 2 duplicators, so I'm in no rush to roll all my gold, but stage 4 is coming up, which is when the majority of players hit level 8 and their 4 cost carry comps come online. We also have one other player in the lobby playing Heartsteel into a Yone reroll, and they sometimes play Riven too if they naturally find her, so I'm constantly scouting to see if I need to roll deep to hit Riven before they take any more. We get to stage 4-1 and I see a few players hitting level 8 now, and as we only need to hit 3 more Rivens and we still don't have Viego or a 2-star Maud, I roll down a bit further to try to keep my board relatively strong. At stage 4-2 we get given a silver augment selection and they're okay, nothing amazing for our comp like Vampirism or Blistering Strikes, but I decide to take the parting gifts as we have 2 Trinity Forces that could be passed on to other edgelords when our main carries die. We then roll down and hit our second 2-star Riven, which means we're only 1 off, so I decided to do a full roll down, hit the last one, which we managed to do. So now we're in a fairly strong position, we're in the middle of the pack in terms of health, and we've just hit our main win condition. So now it's just a case of scouting whoever we might be up against to try to position best we can whilst leveling. But with everyone still in the lobby, it's quite difficult until there's only 4 or 5 players left. So we're going to skip ahead to the late game now. It's pretty much a top 4 and we're now focusing on positioning to increase our chances of getting a higher placement. I scout the 3 players we might face and one is a true damage center board with the center placed on the left side, and the other 2 boards are Yone reroll with Yone on the right side and Executioners with their main carries in the middle. So here I've decided to put my Riven on the left side so she can get to center if we play her, and avoid Yone if we play him, as Riven loses a 1v1 matchup to Yone. We play the center player and we position perfectly for this so that as soon as Riven gets the frontline unit to below 50% health, she dashes through him and straight onto the center, making it a very easy and quick win for us. Next up we play the Yone board, which is a very difficult matchup for us as it's pretty much the same comp, but Yone just seems much stronger than Riven in this matchup. I see he has placed Yone on the opposite side to my Riven, but I know he's been scouting me and I know that he wants Yone on the same side as my Riven. So I'm going to do a last second swap, as I think he's going to swap last second too. We predict right and manage to get our Riven away from the Yone, but it still ends up being a very close fight with Caitlyn putting in some work in the back corner, and I'm not feeling too confident about other rounds against him. Next fight is against Executioners, and with this matchup we want to spread out our damage as much as possible due to the fact that this comp does an insane amount of AoE damage along with the CC from Vex. Again, it ends up being a very close fight that we just managed to win, so it just goes to show how important positioning is with this comp in the final stages. And finally we end up in a fight for first place against the Yone reroll comp. He manages to juke my positioning and gets his Yone right in front of my Riven, so I think the fight is pretty much over, but it turns out his Edge of Night actually works against him. As he becomes untargetable, my Riven attacks another unit and dashes away from him, allowing her to survive. Caitlyn then manages to snipe him and give us the win. So we're now both down to 1 life, but he manages to hit 2-star Kayn, which is what we also wanted, so we say GG thinking it's over, but the fight ends up being very very close, and I think maybe if we positioned a little differently, we could have maybe won. And that's it for this guide. I hope you found it helpful. If you decide to give this comp a try, let me know how you get on in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.